Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we were talking all about how attackers can exploit a feature within Microsoft Defender Antivirus to avoid detection.
Oh, yeah,
It's kind of wild.
it is.
And we're talking about Defender exclusions, and we're basing this deep dive on some really interesting research from Huntress Labs called You Can Run, but You Can't Hide Defender Exclusions.
Yeah. This is a really interesting one, I think.
Yeah.
It really shows how attackers can kind of flip, a tool that's meant for functionality and use it for malicious purposes.
Right.
It's quite fascinating.
Yeah, so before we get into the, super malicious stuff,
Yeah.
can we take a step back for a second and just talk about what Defender exclusions even are and what they do?
Yeah, so the simplest way to explain it is you have a security guard, right? And the security guard has a specific list of people they're told to ignore,
Okay.
even if those people are acting a little suspiciously.
Yeah.
That's essentially what a Defender exclusion is. It's saying, hey, don't span this specific file or process or folder, even if something seems off.
Okay.
Now, this is a very useful feature in legitimate situations like, let's say you have a piece of software or a game that Defender keeps flagging as malicious.
Right, yeah.
An exclusion lets you tell Defender to back off and let that program run smoothly.
So it's almost like a whitelist then.
Exactly.
You're specifically telling Defender, like, hey, this is okay.
Yep, this is good.
Don't worry about it.
Exactly. And there's actually 4 main types of exclusions. You have process path extension and IP address,
Okay.
and each one affects how Defender scans your system.
Right.
So, for example, a process exclusion would say, hey, ignore a specific program like notepad.exe.
Okay.
A path exclusion is more interesting because it tells Defender to bypass an entire folder.
So that seems like that could be pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
If an attacker were to be able to, tell Defender to ignore a whole folder,
Yeah.
they could hide all kinds of stuff in there.
Exactly. That's the kind of scenario that attackers exploit. By creating exclusions for specific paths or file extensions, they can essentially make their malware invisible to Defender.
So they're using Defender against itself?
Exactly.
Wow, that's pretty sneaky.
It is.
So how do attackers set these exclusions?
So it's actually a lot more straightforward than you might think.
Oh, no.
And that's part of the problem.
Okay.
Attackers have a few different ways they can go about it.
Okay.
They can use PowerShell commands like little scripts that tell the computer what to do.
Got it.
They can manipulate something called WMI, or Windows Management Instrumentation.
Okay.
That's a system built into Windows that lets you manage a whole bunch of settings from behind the scenes.
Okay.
They can even exploit group policy settings or modify the registry directly.
Wow.
It's like having a master key to the entire system.
So, if an attacker has gotten in deep enough to mess with WMI or the registry,
Yeah.
I feel like they could probably do whatever they wanted at that point anyway, right?
You're not wrong.
Like,
Yeah.
is it really that big of a deal that they're also setting these exclusions?
You're right, they could do a lot of damage, but attackers are all about efficiency and stealth.
Right.
So if they can use an existing system feature to hide their tracks, why wouldn't they?
Makes sense.
Plus, even if they have a foothold in the system, exclusions provide an extra layer of protection.
Correct.
So it makes it harder for security tools or analysts to actually detect the malicious activity.
So they break in and then they're immediately covering their tracks.
Exactly. They're trying to be as sneaky as possible.
Smart.
Yeah.
Okay, so the article mentions a couple of examples of some actual attacks that have used this. Can you talk about those a little bit?
Absolutely.
Okay.
One example that stands out is the Gootkit campaign from 2019.
Okay.
This was a banking Trojan that used a path exclusion to evade detection.
Okay, and just for those who don't know, what's a banking Trojan?
Yeah, so a banking Trojan is a nasty piece of malware designed to steal your banking credentials, like your usernames, passwords, all that sensitive stuff.
Oh, that's not good.
Not good at all.
Okay.
And in this case, they were able to set the exclusion using the MSFT or MP preference WMI class,
Okay.
making the malicious activity invisible to Defender.
So they use this really powerful tool that's built into Windows
Yeah.
to basically tell Defender to just ignore.
Yeah, basically put a blindfold on Defender.
Wow.
Yeah, and there's other examples too. You remember Whispergate from 2022?
Yeah.
Targeted organizations in Ukraine.
Uh-huh.
And they actually went so far as to exclude the entire C drive using PowerShell.
The whole C drive.
The whole thing.
Wow.
Yeah, so they essentially blinded Defender to anything happening on the most important drive in the system.
So, if they can exclude the C drive, why not just exclude everything?
Well, they could in theory, but it would be a very risky move.
Okay.
Because such a blatant action would likely trigger alarms and raise suspicions.
Oh,
It's a balancing act for attackers.
right.
They want to stay hidden, but also need to avoid setting off any obvious red flags.
Right, so they're walking this tightrope of how much can we get away with before someone notices.
Exactly.
Okay, so that makes sense. But how do you even detect these exclusions?
Okay.
Are they just invisible?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting and a bit more concerning.
Oh, no.
There's a specific registry key called hide exclusions from local admins.
And I'm guessing that hides the exclusions from local admins?
You got it. Okay.
It's essentially a way for attackers to cover their tracks and make their exclusions even harder to detect.
So even if I'm like the administrator
Yeah.
of the system, I can't necessarily see these.
You might not be able to see them using the standard tools and methods.
So even though I'm supposed to have full control over this system,
Yep.
I can't even see what's going on.
That's not good.
This is like they're using Defender against itself, and then they're wiping away all their fingerprints.
It gets worse.
Oh, no.
Even a system user, which has extremely high privileges,
Okay.
can't see these hidden exclusions using the usual commands.
Wow.
And that raises a pretty critical question.
If it's this easy to hide malicious activity, what else might attackers be concealing?
I don't even want to think about it.
Yeah.
All right, so how do we fight back against something that's essentially invisible?
No, where it's not all doom and gloom.
Okay, good.
There are ways to detect these tactics, but
All right.
we'll need to dive a bit deeper into that in the next part.
All right, cliffhanger.
We'll leave you in suspense.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
So let's take a quick break and we'll be right back to figure out how to uncover these sneaky exclusions and protect ourselves. So we just learned how attackers are exploiting Defender exclusions to play this like hide-and-seek game with our security tools.
Mm-hmm.
Not only are they hiding the malware, they're hiding the fact that they hid something.
Right.
So how do we fight back against something that's essentially invisible?
It is a tricky situation, but thankfully it's not an impossible one.
Okay, good.
It just requires a little extra vigilance and a deeper understanding of what we're dealing with.
So what are some things that we can look for to try to catch this before it, gets out of hand?
Well, the key is to remember that even though attackers are trying to be stealthy, they still leave traces.
Well,
It's like trying to erase your footprints in the sand, you know?
right.
You might do a pretty good job, but there will always be subtle signs that someone was there.
Okay.
So one of the first things you want to do is be extremely cautious about any exclusions that are set on your machine.
Okay.
Pay close attention to common attack paths.
Okay.
These are the folders where attackers are most likely to drop their malicious files.
So like the C drive and the temp folder and download.
Exactly. Places that attackers typically use as staging grounds.
Got it.
Any exclusions set for those locations should immediately raise a red flag.
Okay, so that's a big one.
Yeah, it's like seeing a no trespassing sign right next to a giant hole in the fence.
Right. Something's not right.
Exactly.
Okay.
You also want to keep a close eye on that hide exclusions from local admins registry value we talked about earlier.
Right.
If you see that it's been modified, that's a major warning sign.
But if these things are hidden, how do we even see them?
Right, that's the tricky part.
Especially if even system administrators can't see them through normal means.
Right. The standard methods of viewing exclusions, like using PowerShell commands, just won't cut it here.
Okay.
Attackers have intentionally made it difficult to see what they're doing.
So are we just out of luck then?
No.
Okay.
To uncover these hidden gems, you need to go directly to the source, the registry itself.
Ah, the registry.
Yes, the registry.
The mysterious heart of Windows.
Exactly.
Okay, so for those who may not have, spent a lot of time digging around in the registry,
Yeah.
can you explain why it's so important here?
Absolutely. So the Windows registry is essentially a massive database that stores all sorts of configuration settings for your operating system and applications.
Okay.
It's kind of the DNA of your computer,
Okay.
containing all the instructions that make it tick. Now, the beauty of the registry is that it doesn't care about those hide exclusions from local admins tricks that attackers try to pull.
Okay.
It just stores the data, plain and simple.
Okay.
So by directly querying the registry, we can bypass all that obfuscation and see the real, unfiltered picture of what exclusions have been set.
So I'm assuming it takes some, technical know-how to be able to go into the registry and find what you're looking for.
You're absolutely right.
Okay.
It does require some specialized knowledge.
So this isn't something that, the average everyday user is going to want to be messing around with.
Probably not.
Okay.
But thankfully, there are tools and services available that can help automate this process.
Okay.
For example, Huntress, the same company that published the research we're discussing,
Mm.
offers a platform that actively monitors for these types of sneaky exclusion tactics.
So it's like having a security expert constantly looking over your shoulder.
Exactly.
Okay, are there any other tools or methods besides that people could use?
Absolutely. There are a number of open source tools available that can help you visualize and analyze defender exclusions.
Okay.
One such tool is called Autoruns.
Okay.
It's a free utility from SICE internals, which is a part of Microsoft, believe it or not.
It's interesting.
And it gives you an incredibly detailed view of everything that starts up automatically on your system, including those pesky defender exclusions.
So even Microsoft is providing tools to try to help us find these hidden exclusions.
It's right.
So is this one more technical than like a Huntress subscription would be?
It is a bit more hands-on,
Okay.
but if you're comfortable with command line tools and have some experience digging around under the hood of Windows,
Okay.
Autoruns can be an incredibly powerful resource.
So it sounds like there's a trade-off.
Yeah.
You can either go with the paid service or
Yeah,
you can kind of roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty yourself.
exactly.
Okay, cool. But
Yeah.
either way, it sounds like we're not completely defenseless
We are not.
against these tactics.
No, it's all about being proactive and having the right tools and knowledge at your disposal.
Okay.
The attackers are getting more creative, but so are the defenders.
It's like a constant arms race.
It is a constant arms race,
Okay.
but we're not going down without a fight.
All right, I like that attitude.
Yes.
So this brings up another question for me.
Okay.
Is this really the best that Defender can do?
Right.
Like if attackers can so easily exploit this, wouldn't it make sense for Microsoft to just like
Yeah.
redesign it or something?
You know, that's a great question, and it gets at the heart of a fundamental challenge in cybersecurity.
Okay.
You have these powerful tools like Defender designed to protect users from a wide range of threats.
Right.
But any feature, no matter how well-intentioned, can potentially be misused by a determined attacker.
So it's like a double-edged sword almost.
It is a double-edged sword.
Like you need these features to protect yourself, but they can also be used against you.
Exactly. It's a constant balancing act. Microsoft is constantly trying to improve Defender security and make it harder for attackers to exploit.
Right.
But attackers are always looking for new ways to circumvent those defenses.
So we can't just rely on Microsoft to fix this for us.
Exactly. It's about taking ownership of our own security.
We have to be proactive.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, you've definitely given us a lot to think about.
I hope so.
We've learned how attackers exploit Defender exclusions to hide.
Mm-hmm.
We've explored the different methods they use.
Yep.
And most importantly, we've discovered how to detect and defend against these sneaky tactics.
That's right.
So before we wrap things up, what is the most important thing you think people should take away from all of this?
I think the biggest takeaway is that security is a process, not a product.
Okay.
It's not enough to just install an antivirus and call it a day.
Right.
You need to be aware of the potential risks.
Mm-hmm.
Stay informed about the latest threats.
Okay.
And most importantly, be willing to adapt and evolve as the threat landscape changes.
Those are some great points.
Thank you.
So on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this part of our deep dive.
Okay.
I want to thank our expert for breaking down this complex topic and for sharing their incredible insights.
It's been my pleasure.
And to all of you listening, thanks for joining us on this journey into the fascinating and sometimes frightening world of cybersecurity.
Absolutely.
We hope you learned something new and valuable today, and we'll be back for the final part of our deep dive very soon. It's interesting that we started this deep dive talking about, just this one little technical feature.
Mm-hmm.
But we've really gotten into this much broader conversation about security in general.
It's true, we have.
And this whole thing about Defender exclusions has got me thinking.
Okay.
If attackers can twist something like that to their advantage,
Yeah.
what other normal features might be hiding vulnerabilities like that?
Right. Are we just sitting ducks for the next big exploit?
Yeah, basically.
That's a great question, and it's one that keeps security professionals up at night.
I bet.
The reality is that any system, any piece of software, no matter how well designed, can potentially be exploited.
Right, because there's always going to be that
Yeah.
one little hole that someone can find.
It's like a game of chess.
Right.
Attackers are always looking for that one weak spot.
That unguarded pawn.
That unguarded pawn, exactly.
Okay, so how do we stay ahead of the curve?
Yeah.
Do we just have to, constantly be looking over our shoulders?
I wouldn't say it's about living in a state of paranoia,
Okay.
but it is about cultivating a mindset of informed skepticism.
Okay.
We need to be aware of the potential risks,
Mm-hmm.
but also empowered to take action and protect ourselves.
Okay. So what are some things that we can do?
So one of the most important things you can do is stay informed about the latest threats and vulnerabilities.
Okay.
There are tons of great resources out there, like
Mhm.
security blogs, podcasts, even social media groups,
Right.
where you can learn about new attack techniques and how to defend against them.
So knowledge is power in this case.
Absolutely. The more you understand about how attackers operate, the better equipped you'll be to stop them.
It's like learning a new language almost.
It is. It's like learning the attacker's vocabulary, their tactics, their techniques.
Okay.
The better you'll be able to anticipate their moves and defend against them.
Okay, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
But, knowledge can only take us so far.
Right.
What are some actual practical steps
Things people can do.
that we can take right now to make our systems more secure?
Absolutely. So knowledge without action is like a car without an engine.
Right. It's not going to get you anywhere.
Exactly.
Okay.
One of the simplest yet most effective things you can do is to enable multi-factor authentication on all your accounts.
Okay, and that's the thing where you have to enter the code from your phone or email.
That's the one.
Okay.
It might seem like a small inconvenience, but it can make a huge difference in terms of security.
Okay.
Another important step is to keep your software up to date.
Okay.
Software updates often include security patches that fix known vulnerabilities, so make sure you're installing those updates as soon as they're available.
So it's not just about, getting the latest and greatest features,
Right.
but it's also about patching those holes
It's about closing those security holes before attackers can exploit them.
before someone can get in.
Exactly.
Okay.
Think of it like locking your doors and windows before you go to bed.
Right, just that basic step.
Simple step, but it can make all the difference.
Okay, what else?
It's also crucial to be cautious about what you click on and download.
Hmm.
Phishing emails and malicious websites are still some of the most common ways attackers gain access to systems.
So don't click on anything that looks suspicious.
If something seems fishy, it probably is.
Yeah.
It's always better to err on the side of caution when it comes to cybersecurity.
Okay. Good advice.
And finally, one of the most overlooked yet crucial aspects of security is backups.
Oh, yeah. Backups.
Make sure you regularly back up your important data to an external drive or cloud storage service.
Right, because if something does happen, at least you're not losing everything.
Exactly. Even if the worst happens, you won't lose everything.
Backups, the unsung heroes of data security.
They are the unsung heroes.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
From the very technical details of Defender exclusions to these really broad principles of cybersecurity.
Yeah.
So what is like the one key message you would want our listeners to take away from all this?
I think the most important thing is to remember that security is a journey, not a destination.
Okay.
It's not something you achieve overnight,
Right.
but rather an ongoing process of learning, adapting, and taking action.
And never be afraid to ask for help.
And most importantly, don't be afraid to ask questions and seek help when you need it.
Okay.
There's a whole community of security professionals and enthusiasts out there who are willing to share their knowledge and support each other.
So true.
Yeah,
Well, this has been a fantastic conversation.
it has.
So thank you so much for sharing your insights.
It's been my pleasure.
And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the world of cybersecurity.
Absolutely.
Stay curious, stay vigilant, and most importantly, never stop learning.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And we will see you next time.